Go.
Yeah, we're going. Once upon a time, there were two people when suddenly things didn't go right for all the right reasons. The two people were involved in a confrontation with a gang of youths. However, the youths, they would get arrested and they would spend life in prison. The next day, the two of them, they went out for Chinese on London Road, where they were given excellent customer service. They were happy with the customer service that they received from the Chinese restaurant on London Road. Later that evening, they decided they would go to the lead mill. They would have a really nice time. However, what they weren't to know is that four men would come into the lead mill and they would follow the two people. Suddenly things started to get really tense for them. They were shaking and they didn't know what to do. The security staff escorted the four men out of the nightclub. The following day, the two of them, they went out for the day. They went to Magnet and they looked around Magnet Centre before they would go to the countryside for a really nice walk in the Peak District, and they would take some really nice photos. Later that afternoon, they stopped off for lunch. They stopped off for lunch and had a picnic. They walked to Paddy Gorge where they walked their dog. Later that evening, they went back home and they had sausage and mash for their tea before they would watch the chase on ITV. The next day, they would go to work and they would work in the police force. Later that afternoon, they would go to Chatsworth House and go on a really nice walk. They would look round Chatsworth before later on they would go and watch a football match. They would watch their cousins playing football for Handler of Paramore. Later that evening, they would settle down for the night and they would order a pizza from Domino's before later they would watch the new X-Men on Netflix. The next day they would go to work. Before in the evening they would invite their friends over and they would have a barbecue. The next day they went to Flamingo Land. They went on all the rides and then they decided they would go out for a curry at a restaurant in Sheffield City Centre. Yeah, they received excellent customer service and then they decided they would go to bed early as they had to be up for work early in the morning. The next morning, they had breakfast before heading to work for their shift. They would have a very busy shift. Later that evening, they would go out for drink. They went out for drinks at the common room and they would play some games of pool. The next day, they went back to work in the evening. They would have. The next day they went back to work in the evening. They would have shepherd's pie for their tea before they would have sticky and stuffy pudding for the dessert. I think it is. Yeah, sticky and stuffy pudding for the dessert. Later evening they had their tea and they had their dessert. The following day they went swimming at Graves Lady Centre and they did a couple of lengths before they did their gym programme. Later that afternoon they bought a panini from Greg's and they caught the train to Barnsley Market and they bought some really nice things for their families. The next day they went to work when they received a phone call. Their nan was having problems and she was rushed into hospital. Later that evening after work they went into the hospital to see how their nan was and then they stayed with her until they went home and had their tea. The next day they went to Chester Zoo for the day. They looked around the zoo and looked at all the different animals. Later that afternoon they went for lunch at Handmade Burger Co. Later that evening they watched Big Bang Theory on E4. The following day they went to church and they sang songs and worshipped about God. Later that evening, later that afternoon, they came home and made a Sunday roast for them and their friends. Later that evening they went out and they did some fishing at Barlow and they caught some fish. The following day they went back to the hospital to check up on their nan to see how their nan was doing. Suddenly their nan's condition was starting to get worse. It would be a miracle if their nan was to survive from this. The following day they stayed with their nan and they tried talking to their nan, but their nan was confused and she couldn't remember anything what was happening. Later that afternoon the two of them, they helped their nan. Suddenly their nan's condition was starting to improve and it would be a matter of time before the nan would be released from the hospital. The following day the nan would be released from the hospital and the two of them went bird watching. They went bird watching. They were looking at different birds what were flying around. The next day they went to work where they were working until tea time. Later that evening they both decided they would do some surfing off the coast of Brighton Pier. The following day they decided they would go to London for the weekend. They booked into their accommodation and they went out for a meal at a restaurant in the London city centre. The next day they looked around Buckingham Palace before finishing off their time in London going over the River Thames on the boat. The next day they returned back to Sheffield and they went shopping on the moor. However, what wasn't known is that the shop where they were going shopping, they ran out of stock, so they decided they would go to another shop. Later that afternoon they had Subway for lunch and then they decided they would catch the bus to Western Park. And the following day they played games. They decided they would play a game of cards. Later that evening they went to bed early as they had to be at work early for a really early shift. The following day they woke up and got ready for work. Later that afternoon they were on a shift. Later that evening they took their dog for a walk before later on settling down for the night and watching Top Gear on BBC Two. The next day they went swimming at Hillsborough swimming baths before they would go to Hillsborough Park to play some tennis. The end, Sam Jenkinson.